Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell. We're back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have, it's now illegal in Albuquerque, New Mexico to be unhoused and be in a tent, protecting them from exposure to the elements and maintaining privacy, from dailylobo.com by Ragnar OKXG, and that's a cross post from the Albuquerque subreddit. And yeah, I personally think if people want to set up a tent anywhere, they should be able to do so. They shouldn't have to rely on the government to tell them whether they can or not. You know, people shouldn't need to ask government permission for anything. People need to give themselves permission rather than let the government nanny state tell them what they can and can't do. Also, I think it's interesting how it says unhoused rather than homeless, because, you know, the progressives always have to constantly try and change up the vocabulary to make it more and more progressive. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have conservative user blocks pushback in a two-tiered subreddit by Knee Concussions, and they said there has been a rise in the subreddit of right-leaning / conservative users blocking those that disagree with, and is beginning to create an echo chamber. One user will say a blatant lie or something hateful, get called out for it, and block whoever called them out. If you've been here for some time, you recognize that pattern. Over time, it's begun to create an environment where very few regular users can actually comment or receive things being posted to those users. It's something of a two-tier sub where most left-leaning users are blocked by our most prominent right-wing users. It's being seriously affect discourse. If there are no voices pushing back on the hater lies or just flat out bullshit, what will this place turn into? As it is right now, it is a smorgasbord of left, right, and center. So if you see a blatant lie or transphobia or anything of the sort, call it the fuck out. And no, I'm not faulting the mods or saying they should take action. And yeah, personally, I've always seen Reddit censorship as being worse from the woke / progressive users in regard to blocking at both the at the admin, moderator, and user levels. But, you know, I guess people always want to say that their side is the one who's really being censored and oppressed. So I guess, you know, justify seeing the world however you want. With that being said, you know, I do think it does come down under freedom of association. If people want to block or block each other or ban each other from each other's subreddits, I think they should be able to do so. You know, but I don't think that makes it right. I do think blocking and banning do both go against free speech. But ultimately, it does come down to, as I said, freedom of association. You know, I personally don't think Lester Maddox should have not been serving black people at his restaurant. But if he wanted to, I think he should have been able to do so. I think that's very much the libertarian position. You know, if people want to do something that they shouldn't, I think they should be able to. But that being said, you know, I do think, you know, we need to hold them accountable for not supporting free speech. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, thank you Elon for giving me the final incentive I needed to delete my Twitter account, from Ragnar OKXG, and that's cross post from the Leopards Ain't My Face subreddit. After a dispute over video games, Elon leaks anti-woke streamer Asmongold's DMs and personally removes his blue check mark. And yeah, you know, it just goes to show you how you know, Joe Biden in his farewell address said, increasingly we live in, you know, he said, Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex, now we have the tech-industrial complex. And yeah, he wasn't saying that for reasons I probably agree with. You know, he's just sad that his party doesn't control the big tech anymore. But that being said, he's probably right. Increasingly, you know, the government, those who have power aren't the government, it's those who are running the tech platforms, because they can essentially control the discourse, whether it be Elon Musk at Twitter, or Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, or Steve Huffman at Reddit. Essentially, these people can control what isn't acceptable in the new public town square of the 21st century. And I think they need to be held accountable when they do censor. So, you know, I personally do think Elon is relatively good at free speech compared to a lot of them. But with that being said, how he's treating Asmongold here isn't good, and he needs to be held accountable for that when it comes to, you know, it's his platform. He can justify whatever he wants. But as I said with the last post, you know, you need to hold those in power accountable, even if it's non-governmental power, because in a lot of cases, even if they're private platforms instead of public platforms, social media companies have become the new standard for how people get and share information, and they need to be held accountable for that. With great power comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben said once in the Spider-Man. That definitely applies, I think, with social media. Then we have House GOP's budget hawks now want a $4 trillion debt limit hike from HuffPost.com by Donald Key. And yeah, it just goes to show you that it doesn't really matter which party's in the white in power. There's always going to be spending like there's no tomorrow, and yeah, it just doesn't really matter who's in power. The GOP might say, "Oh, we are the party of fiscal responsibility," but they'll just spend money when they're in power, just like the Democrats will spend money when they're in power, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have pregnant teen died agonizing sepsis death after Texas doctors refused to abort dead fetus from SlaterReport.com by Ninja Lover, and that's crosswords from the All That Is Interesting subreddit. And yeah, I heard this is actually it's the baby had nothing to do with it. It actually was just the doctors misdiagnosing her sepsis, and Reddit is misrepresenting the facts in order to push a narrative and an agenda. That's a lot of what social media is these days. Don't let facts get in the way of a good narrative. And yeah, I think they should be able to do that. I support freedom of speech, but you gotta call them out on it, because essentially social media is now nothing but propaganda, and for a lot of instances. And yeah, so I personally am more on the pro-choice side, but you need to hold people accountable when they tell flat-out lies in order to advance their agenda, and that's what Ninja Lover is doing here. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's inauguration won't change the fact that people dislike high gas prices from Reason.com by CDN history student. And they shared a quote from a paragraph from the article. Specifics remain to be seen, but now analysts believe prices could jump by 40 cents or even 70 cents per gallon if those tariffs spiral into a broader trade war. Energy companies are already warning about volatility in crude oil prices impacting refineries and downstream fuel markets, especially for gasoline and diesel. And yeah, I definitely do think, I just have to wait and see what the effects of the tariffs are. I don't think they'll be good. I think, if it definitely might go into a broader trade war and gas prices might rise, but I don't think it really matters. But the Biden administration supported tariff as well, but no one ever dared call them out on it because he was in the in-group rather than the out-group. And now that the out-group's supporting tariffs are the worst thing ever. So I don't think it really matters. At this point, maybe he'll get held accountable this time, and they'll switch parties again. But it doesn't really matter because they're just both the same, two wings of the same unibird anyway. So I don't think it really matters too much in the long run. Then we have audio. Rep. Gary Connolly, D. Virginia 11, says Trump assault on non-politicized civil service is going back to the spoil system pre-1883. Says Musk and Ramaswamy both engaged in mindless disruption that many R's have swallowed the Kool-Aid. From bluevirginia.us by Ninja Lover, and that's crosspost from the r/Virginia subreddit. And yeah, I definitely think the source is biased. It's an openly Democratic source, bluevirginia.us. But I do think, increasingly those in positions of power only want to employ those who agree with them. And I guess, I personally don't really care for the spoil system, but if those in positions of power want to justify, I think they should be able to. I'm all for freedom of association, and I think the spoil system is probably the future of when it comes to the bureaucracy. People only want to hire members of the in-group rather than the out-group. And yeah, ultimately, I personally don't really care for that, but I'm for freedom of association. Hire whoever you want to, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump names Mel Gibson, Jon Voight, and Sylvester Stallone his special envoys to Hollywood. And yeah, I personally don't really, that's from CBSNews.com by FlimCF563, I personally don't care for that, but he, I don't think, they should be, I don't think we should have government ambassadors to Hollywood. We already have enough government positions as is. Hopefully they're not going to be on government payroll, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Biden pardons nearly 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders from abcnews.go.com by Baton 13. And yeah, this is more, Biden ass-kissing. The state can, some nonviolent drug offenders might have done violent things, but they were just classified as nonviolent drug offenders. But yeah, so I guess, government should be able for whoever wants to, but there might be some dangerous people among these supposedly nonviolent drug offenders. But Reddit doesn't care. They just want exist to suck the Democratic Party's dick. And increasingly, that's what all the subreddit is just DNC propaganda gobbledygook, as I've said in the past. Then we have Biden declares there is now a 28th Amendment. There is not, from Lemon Limelight. Probably one of the only people on this subreddit who isn't all DNC propaganda gobbledygook. And they shared from the Washington Post, Biden declares that there is now a 20th Amendment. There is not. Sometimes crazy things happen at the end of a presidency, but rarely do we see something like this. An outgoing president suddenly declaring there is never an amendment to the Constitution. That's what President Joe Biden seemingly attempted to do Friday in his first final full day in office. Biden announced that the 20th Amendment, an amendment guaranteeing men and women equal rights under the law and the law of the land, but 20th Amendment has not suddenly been appended to the Constitution for Biden's decree. There are still only 27, nor is there any appear to be much hope that it will be soon. It's all at best a Hail Mary and at worst a strange political ploy that runs afoul of the rule of law. Biden has spent 4 years pitching as one of his foremost concerns. And they added, ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment is its deadline, and 5 states have since rescinded their ratification. There's some controversy on whether those matter, but suffice to say that these issues are far from being settled enough for a president to claim an amendment is law. And yeah, it just goes to show you, I saw a good tweet about this recently. Let me look it up. Yeah, it was from, what was his name? It appears J. Hassan. If Trump tried to officially alter the Constitution by tweet, the Atlantic would devote an entire issue to it, but Joe Biden doesn't and no one really cares. And that just goes to show you how, they're all authoritarian, and it just goes to, it doesn't really matter anymore what people do. It matters who does it. And yeah, I think the Equal Rights Amendment, regardless of your faults, and I personally don't think it's that good because, I think the Constitution already has enough in it already, and I don't think it should be expanded. I don't want the state to define what is equal rights because, increasingly they'll say, oh, women have more rights than men. In a lot of extent, women already do have more rights than men when it comes to the U.S. When it comes to, that they can always accuse someone they don't like of rape and, they can get away with it. And yeah, so yeah, I personally think, it's good, well intentioned, but I don't think it should be the state's job to determine what equal rights are. But regardless of your faults in it, I don't think Biden should have just saying, oh, it's unilateral law now. And yeah, I personally think we need less, gotta get rid of a few of the amendments. I think we already have too many already. We gotta get rid of the stuff like the income tax, that's one of them we got rid of, and maybe direct election of senators as well. I think that's another one you should probably get rid of, because I think the less democracy you have, the more control it's gonna be. And yeah, I think the people, Trump would have never gotten the Republican nomination if it was just if it wasn't a direct election like it used to be, like they said at the convention rather than the primaries. And yeah, so I personally think we need less democracy rather than more democracy. That's another amendment I'd get rid of. But yeah, ultimately, if people want to justify saying that there's 20 amendments now, they should be able to do so. But, I personally think, we shouldn't be forced to recognize any amendment as legitimate if you don't think so it is. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Louisiana governor says he'll raise MAGA flag for Trump inauguration from thehill.com by Donald Key. And that's crosswords from the centrist subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that. But ultimately, I think people should be able to fly whatever flags they want to. Then we have, so Argentina wants to cosplay as Golden Age America from Swamp Yankee Dan. Crosswords from the Workform subreddit, and that's a tweet from Ben Norton. Argentina's far-right Libertarian President Javier Milei is trying to push through anti-work labor reform that will increase the workday to 12 hours, no overtime. It will also allow companies to pay workers partially with tickets, no real money that can only be used at supermarkets or specific designated businesses. The anti-worker reform is enthusiastically called the Law of Promotion of Involvement in Employment. Here's the source from the local media in Argentina, and link to 11noticias.com. And yeah, I personally think, the companies should be able to set whatever workday they want. The government shouldn't be telling the companies what the workday should be. And if the government and the companies do want to pay workers with partial tickets and not real money, that they should be able to do so. I don't think the government should be telling workers what they can and can't do. And I love how they call them far-right libertarian, because, increasingly on Reddit, if you defend at all, you're far-right, and there's no exception to that. You have to agree with all the progressive worldview, or you're a far-right Nazi, according to Reddit. And that's why increasingly, I don't even care what they say. I only just want to break up their circle jerk. And that's my thoughts there. And we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.